After the brutal American Civil War that ended in 1928 with the fall of San Francisco and the ultimate downfall of the Oregon Soviet Republic, the only little thing remaining between the KKK and their path to ultimate dominance in America. In Montgomery, Alabama, 12-year-old Isaac Johnson wakes up before dawn in his quote-unquote colored quarters. His mother makes bread from cornmeal and land ration slips. These slips are not the same as those granted to his white peers. His mother has not been allowed to work as a nurse since 1929, when the Occupation Classification Act barred, you can say, Negro labor from any medical or educational role. Isaac's father, once a teacher, now digs drainage ditches under the Federal Agricultural Reclamation Corps, a chain gang style institution that's slavery in all but name. Officially, it's quote unquote rehabilitative work, but everyone knows you don't say that out loud or you get lynched in the dead of the night. White families in town don't see any of this. To them, life has never been more quote unquote decent. Patriotic parades are weekly. Children salute the portraits of the great leader, Chancellor William Simmons, or as they call him, the Grand Wizard of the Grand Empire of America. Every radio jingle, every poster, every speech rings with talk of heritage, Christian renewal, and the great American Revolution, the second one. In elite circles in cities like Richmond, St. Louis, or the newly rebuilt Atlanta, the Klan has reshaped society's upper echelons. They have replaced Congress with a council of racial harmony, where membership requires proven Anglo-Saxon descent and loyalty oaths. Catholics, Jews, and of course African Americans are completely banned from banking. When the Klan first took power, the entire world expected them to do the usual things: start mob lynchings, reinstate slavery, blah blah blah. But no. Instead, the Klan have behaved in a much more shrewd way. They have effectively debarred African Americans and all other minorities from life in general. You cannot do banking, you cannot be in most jobs. Thus, the only thing you can do is join the chain gangs. And using these chain gangs, they are slowly reinstating slavery in a very modern national syndicalist way. In the Deep South, things are darker. Restoration plantations are springing up, part of the Southern Agrarian Recovery Plan. Black families are resettled under binding labor contracts. Children are sorted at age 9. If you are lucky, you get to clean houses. If you are unlucky, it's the fields with the malaria and the death without any medicine for most of the time. All under the doctrine of voluntary service for racial guidance. The word slavery is actually never officially used in any document, and yet, not all is rigid terror. The Klan's leadership, educated in military academics, are shrewd. They let black gospel radio exist for God's sake, but it is now sanitized, filled with yes men. In fact, some black liberation groups have even cooperated with the Klan because they believe that the Klan will help them establish a new nation state somewhere in Africa. Because for them, America is not the land that their ancestors helped to build. It was the land that their ancestors were forced to work in, and that by going back to their original land, they can perform better. These collaborators are the worst scum to have inherited the land. But anyway, this propaganda machine repackages black culture as domesticated arts of the folk and sells it abroad to fund the state. American exceptionalism and a hardcore Monroe Doctrine has resulted in the annexation of Mexico and Canada to the American empire in all but name. The Americans have granted the Mexican presidentship to Andreas Bravo and the Canadian one to a niche, hitherto unknown racist guy named Charles McDougall. In fact, most Canadians don't even know who he was before he took power. Now, nobody calls America as the USA. They call it the Grand Empire of America. And so you see, this is what America is. The clan now rule it completely. And then in Europe, we of course have the Gross-Germanisches Reich under the Führer Heinrich Himmler. Himmler has instituted a terrible form of terror, where the Schutzstaffel ruled Germany as an esoteric Aryanistic dictatorship based on Aryan agrarian life, the power of raw milk. They wish to reinstate the old Spartan system, where Germany is under one single Führer. Himmler, in fact, has even taken steps to deindustrialize some parts of Germany in favor of a new quote unquote pure agrarian life. Himmler's grand ambitions, however, are not restricted to Germany. For now, he has completed the Anschluss of Austria, the annexation of Switzerland, Czechoslovakia, parts of Poland, and after a quick, decisive war in the West which lasted for 2 years, Himmler's men have conquered Netherlands, Belgium, established an Odenstadt Frankreich under Julien Dupetit-Thouart, and also subjugated Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and conquered Finland. But this is not all. Himmler's grander ambitions also extended to Italy, where he defeated Benito Mussolini's National Syndicalist government, and in its place he established a new esoteric Aryanistic dictatorship under Massimo Albericchi. Once again, like the clan's puppet leaders in Canada and Mexico, no Italians even knew who this man was. It is just an unknown person. And in the Vatican City, it is extremely funny that Himmler has crowned an extremely racist Ku Klux Klan collaborator Catholic priest from Alabama named Jonas Simpson as Pope Jonas the First. And this is very funny because, on one hand, Himmler claims that the Ku Klux Klan are not real Aryanists and they are just people who are LARPing. They are anarchists in his grand visions of Aryanism. But then again, he does have a weird kind of respect for the Ku Klux Klan because he believes that now that the KKK have taken power in America, they can actually fulfill Manifest Destiny and subjugate the Wild West for his white ambitions. Then, of course, we have got the Kingdom of Spain, Portugal, the British Empire now under an ultra militarocracy after its defeat against Himmler's men and after their utter failure to save France from Himmler's conquests. Now the British want to reclaim what was once there, to reclaim their empire in India and in Africa. But Ireland, meanwhile, has taken over its territories in Ireland. But in the East, there is something quite different. The year is 1930, and the red banners of the Bolsheviks no longer fly in Samara or atop the spires of Moscow, Kazan, or even Yekaterinburg. They were buried under dust and hoofprints when Enver Pasha returned from supposed death and exile, rode east out of Bukhara in 1920, and in the next 10 years he led a successful conquest of the USSR. Now he sits enthroned in his capital city, in Tashkent, which is very similar to Taimur's capital of Samarkand in the Middle Ages. He rules a vast empire, stretching from the Northern Sea to the Urals, from the Kazakh steppe to the Caspian Sea. They call him the Kurt Basbuk, the wolf leader. Neither Sultan nor Khalif, he has taken a new title, blending Turkic, Islamic, and modernist traditions of ultra nationalism. His realm is a dizzying patchwork. Sufi mullahs walk beside ex Cossacks turned tyrannists, Mongol descended generals, many people who are Turks, who are actually refugees which have fled after the Greek conquest of Turkey, which resulted in the Greeks completing the Megali idea and completely subjugating and establishing a puppet state in Turkey. Ultimately, even after establishing such a large emirate of Turkestan, Enver Pasha's final dream remains distant. For to fulfill his quest of liberating Turkey from the Greeks, he will have to fight the Turks' main ally, which is Germany. Greece's main ally Germany, although Greece is not part of the Neue Ordnung, which is basically Himmler's empire and the Iraqi Hashemites, they all together form a very powerful bloc against Enver Pasha. If Enver Pasha dares to attack Turkey, then he will not only have to face Greece and Germany, but also the Hashemite kingdom of Iraq. So it is a very delicate situation that now exists in Eurasia. However, inside the realm of Russia, things are not very different. The Orthodox churches are now mostly shuttered or turned into temples of the eternal Turkic spirit, or mosques in many cases. Ethnic Russians are largely tolerated, but are clearly subservient to the Turkic peoples, labeled as guest peoples and barred from important military and civilian positions. Many of the Russian youth are forced to attend special re-education yurts where they learn about the glories of Attila, Timur, Chengiz and Alparslan. But this is no barbaric wasteland. In fact, Enver Pasha is a modernizer who has built railways across the steppe, modeled after German war plans and Himmler's plans in Germany. There are millions and millions of Jewish refugees who have fled Germany and came to the Emirate of Turkestan, where they are welcomed by Enver Pasha, because he believes that the Jews can be used strategically to boost the economy of the Emirate of Turkestan, similar to what the Tsars did in the early modern era. Every home flies two flags, the crescent of Islam and the eternal sky, the wolf banner, and of course the crescent of the Turks. Boys are drafted at 12 into the Alp Er Akademisi, the Hero Man Academy, and girls are often sent to the National Honor Households where they are educated in language, medicine, and modern readiness. The entire nation is in a state of readiness to attack Turkey, to reclaim Ankara, to reclaim Istanbul, and sweep not only into Greece but all the way towards Hungary and take Vienna. Behind the glory, however, lie the camps, the fields of isolation, where Turkified Slavs, dissident Turkmens, and atheists are quote unquote re educated. The Romanovs are dead, Stalin is presumed executed, Lenin's body was dragged out of Moscow and thrown in a ditch somewhere. Moscow is reduced to ash, but Berlin still stands, and Enver's eyes have not stopped moving. Then, of course, we come to the Middle East, where the Hashemite kingdom of Iraq has managed to reunify most of the middle realm of the Arabs. But Faisal I's grand ambitions to reunify not only include Egypt but also Libya, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and of course parts of Kurdistan, Turkey, and Iran. Iran is still ruled by the Qajars, and then we have the Emirate of Afghanistan. India remains in a warlord stage, divided between a range of different governments, from Kashmir to Nepal, Kutch, the Lucknow Republic, the Bengali Sultanate, the Hyderabad State Kingdom of Mysore, Travancore. But the most charismatic Indian leader is, of course, Subhash Chandra Bose, president of the Bombay National Movement. Bose has established an unlikely alliance with Himmler and the Ku Klux Klan because he believes that only these powers can help him to reunify India and take it back from the socialists and the reactionaries. Elsewhere in China, we see a similar situation, although a little bit more centralized. In the north, the heavenly army of Fengxian has taken over the northern areas. They have crowned Emperor Puyi as the Emperor of China, and they wish to restore China as it was before, a strict Confucian monarchy and theocracy. Of course, Puyi is not the real power. The real power is held by the royalist party of Fengxian or China. And of course, behind the scenes, it is all controlled from Tokyo by Emperor Yoshihito's men, who also control Japanese Shandong under Kamio Mitsuomi. The biggest warlord state in China is the Geely clique, or better known as the Chinese national state, under Cao Kun. Cao Kun is a typical authoritarian democrat, and recently he has established good relations with Germany, Because again, like Subhash Bose, he believes that only Himmler can help him to reunify China. They are opposed by the Xinjiang People's Republic, which is a hardcore communist state. In fact, after the defeat of the USSR by Enver Pasha, there was a huge amount of socialist refugees, adventurers, and philosophers who have now fled and made the Xinjiang People's Republic their home. Then we also have their client states of the People's Republic of Inner Mongolia, the People's Republic of Shaanxi under Chen Duxiu, who is actually more of a council communist. So he controls Shaanxi as his own warlord communist state, which is more independent from the Xinjiang People's Republic. And then we have got the banded territory of central China, which is a territory with total anarchy. The territory sits in between the tripartite powers of the Tibetans, the Xinjiang People's Republic, the Chile clique, and also the Yunnan clique under Tang Jiao. And since it is very difficult for one of these powers to attack central China, central China today is a heaven for bandits. It is even worse than the American Wild West because, at least in the Wild West, there was some kind of government. Here, there is none. Then we come to Eastern Russia, where there are a range of Russian governments. Beginning from the Far East, we have the Japanese Protectorate of Kamchatka. Then we have the Far Eastern Republic, where Alexander Kerensky has promised to reunify Russia. He has built a powerful alliance with the Japanese and the English, and as of now, Kerensky is the one with the most legitimacy to reunify Russia. But he is not alone. We also have the Russian state under Alexander Kolchak. If Kerensky has looked to Japan and the British Empire for legitimacy, Kolchak has looked to none other than Heinrich Himmler. He has established a powerful police state in Siberia filled with gulags and all kinds of police state things. And now it is a Cold War in Eastern Russia between Himmler and the Japano-British imperialism. And then we have the minority, where in Mongolia we have the Russian army in Mongolia, where Khan Roman von Sternberg has declared his own Russian Khanate. I have nothing to really say about it. It is just schizophrenia. Then we have, of course, Vietnam, which is divided up between French Indochina in the south, where the French have relocated and established a government in exile because, of course, mainland France is now under, let's just say, new management. And northern Vietnam is led by the reactionary socialist Free Vietnamese state under Nguyen Thai Hoc, who wants to build a Confucian Marxist dictatorship in Vietnam. Then we have Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and finally we come to Latin America, where, as they say, nothing ever happens. It's all the same. And this is the state of the world today. A new Cold War has started between the Germans on one hand and the Japanese, British on the other hand. Of course, the French have also established another government in exile under Martial Henry Merlin, who is allied with the French Indo-Chinese government in exile. Then we have Portugal, who have completed their pink map after the collapse of the British Empire. And then we have South Africa, the independent Cape Republic, which have, of course, allied with Heinrich Himmler. So, Collapsing World Mod is going to release their new update very soon, in fact, in the coming few days. So check it out. The link to the mod is in the description, and have a great day.